pushing the envelope into any envelope is very difficult, regardless of where you're at. And in space is certainly the case.
We'll take our next question now from Stephen Clark with Ars Technica.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Stephen Clark from Ars Technica. Butch, you mentioned this in your introduction for a moment, but both of you are veterans of the Navy captains. I just wanted to hear your thoughts from each of you on seeing your ship leave without you. What was that like, and were you staying up late to watch the landing the other day?
Well, you know, we actually had a couple duties while we were getting ready to let Starliner depart. There's some things that the International Space Station has to get ready and be prepared and make sure that it understands that a visiting vehicle has undocked and it goes back to its normal regime of operating. So actually we were tasked with that. We were up in the cupola and we were watching our spaceship, you know, fly away at that point in time. So I think it was good. We had some extra activities. You know, of course, we're very knowledgeable about Starliner, so it was obvious, you know, what was happening at each moment. We were talking to our control team, people, friends of ours that we know how much time and effort that they have put into this spacecraft, the excellent and precision activities that they're doing down on the ground. It was nice to have that, you know, one-on-one conversation over the space to ground as Starliner was leaving, just knowing that she was in their hands and they were going to do the best that they could to get her back home. Other thoughts about seeing it leave, you know, like you mentioned, we're both, you know, Navy. We've both been on deployments. We're not surprised when deployments gets changed. I mean, our families extended. Our families are used to that as well. So that's not a humongous surprise. I think, like Butch said, this is test. I think before we even flew, we had an interview with a lot of you and mentioned the same thing, that, you know, a test flight means that we're probably going to find some stuff. We've done as much as we can to look at the envelope that we're going to operate in, but this is the first time that we've had humans in space in Starliner, and we did find stuff, and you know, we made the right decisions, and we're here, and that's how things go in this business. Like Butch said, it's risky, and that's how it goes in the business.
We'll go to Joey Roulette with Reuters.
Hey, thank you. For both of you, you know, you both have had, for the past few years, you've played a very kind of intimate role in Starliner's development, which of course has not been easy for Boeing for a number of reasons. And I know failures is common in spacecraft testing, but looking back, what could Boeing have done differently in Starliner's development?
That is a very interesting and a very fair question. I'll say this. There is not enough time right now to go into all the details to make any answer I think that I could give make complete sense. I could say a few things and it would be taken the wrong way, a way that I didn't mean it to be. So for questions like that, all that will play out in the coming months. We've got lessons learned that we will go through. We will have discussions. We will be involved with those discussions, and things that need to change will change. Obviously, when you have an issues like we've had, there's some changes that need to be made. Boeing's on board with that. We're all on board with that. And I can tell you, when you push the edge of the envelope again and you do things with spacecraft that have never been done before, just like Starliner, you're going to find some things. And in this case, we found some things that we just could not get comfortable with putting us back in the Starliner when we had other options. There's many cases in the past where there have not been other options. We were very fortunate that we have the space station and that we had the option to stay and we had the option to come back a different way if that's what the data showed. I think the data could have gotten there. We could have gotten to the point, I believe, where we could have returned on Starliner, but we just simply ran out of time because there's other tests that need to be done and other assessments that need to be done, and had we had a little more time, then we could have done it. And why didn't we take the time? Well, it's the International Space Station. We've got 7 people, 7 USOS crew on board, 12 total, and we've been 6 on board for quite some time. And to staff the space station with 6 people, we've done it well, I think, over the last couple of months, but it's not prepared for that long term. And so we had to make some decisions on a timeline. And the timeline came to the point to where we had to decide, is Starliner coming back with us or without us? And we just did not have enough time to get to the end of that runway where we could say that we were going to come back with it. I think we'd have gotten there, but we just ran out of time.
We'll take our question now from Jonathan Seri with Fox News.
Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Butch, you mentioned at the beginning of this news conference you appreciated all the prayers. You've been very forthcoming about your faith throughout this mission. I'm wondering how your faith has helped you throughout this mission and whether there are any ways in which this mission has informed or influenced your faith.
I tell you, I really appreciate that question as well. I don't want to take advantage of my position to do things and say things that are outside the realm of what should be done and said in any forum. But I will say this. If you really want to know how I feel about all of this, 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. You can look that up, and it'll kind of tell the story. 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10.
We'll take a question from Mark Strassman with CBS News.
Great to talk to you again. Sonny, I have one for you and then one for Butch. But Sonny, a slight variation on you trained for a round trip on Starliner, and that's not how it worked out. So how do you feel about coming home on SpaceX? And Butch, you went up for, you thought, roughly 8 days. It's going to be more than 8 months. Talk a little bit about the psychological adjustment for you and your family.
That's a good question.
So it's interesting questions. When Butch and I were preparing for this flight, we obviously had talked about it a lot, and we had talked about it being a test flight, and knowing that it was scheduled for 8 days, there could be other things that would keep us here a little bit longer. We've been training for not only Starliner, but also the International Space Station for a number of years. Both of us had been up here before, so we have a little bit of experience, and so we could dive right into the International Space Station training. So we are fully qualified crew members, both qualified in spacewalking, EVAs, and robotics for visiting vehicles. So the transition was not that hard. Both of us are mechanically inclined, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. There's a lot of things to do on the space station when it comes to, maintenance and repair. Maybe we didn't get all of the science experiments, training before we left, because that was not really initially on the plate. But we're getting some OJT on-the-job training while we're up here. So we're blending right into the increment, particularly this 172, increment 72, because we'll be 2 of the U.S. crew members that are involved there. So I think the transition has been pretty smooth. It wasn't what we expected. However, we were prepared, and, the NASA, like Butch mentioned, has got us ready to go for that aspect. So flying home on SpaceX on the Dragon, there's been a Dragon here the whole time we've been here, of course, with Crew 8 that came up on the Dragon. So we've had the opportunity to go in the spacecraft, look at it, and work with our other crew members to get it ready to be our, emergency escape vehicle if we have to use it. And then, of course, we're getting some training on the Crew 9 vehicle as it comes up. We're excited to fly in 2 different spacecraft. I mean, we're testers. That's what we do. We look at different aircraft, spacecraft, whatever, evaluate it, and that's a pretty unique opportunity. I think, this was not the very first option. We wanted to take Starliner to the completion and land it back on land at home. But, you have to turn the page and look at the next opportunity and, do good for the agency and the country, and we'll come back with some evaluations of both spacecraft, and I think we're pretty fortunate for that.
I think I remember your question.
Sorry, I talked too much.
No, it's good. It's good. Let me answer your question like this. So Sonny wore a NASA shirt to represent NASA and who we are with, right? I wore my Naval Aviator Pilot Astronaut Wings shirt. That's both of us. I'm NASA, she's Navy Pilot Astronaut Wings as well. These wings represent honor, courage, and commitment. NASA, our core values within the astronaut corps at Flight Operations Directorate, Johnson Space Center, we have core values that we stand by. And there's many of those. Many of those are biblical principles. I can sum it up in one word, and that's resiliency. We are tasked and we learn and we train to handle all types of situations. And this is not just at NASA. This is something Suni and I have done for an entire career. And this is something that, she doesn't have children, but she has some nieces and nephews, and I know she instills in them the same thing I instilled in my daughters, my wife and I, and that is to be resilient. You have to go with what the good Lord gives you, whatever that is, whatever is allowed, whatever comes by. And, I don't look back and say, woulda, shoulda, coulda. I look back and say, going forward, how can I fix? What can we do to make this better? And that's our mindset right now. I don't look back and say, oh, my, this or that. I don't. Yeah. And that's not, it's more this resiliency is not, it's not what we do at NASA. I think it's more who we are. And we deal with all types of difficulties in all types of situations. And it builds a great deal of fortitude, and it builds a great deal of character, not just within NASA, but all of the contractors, because like I said earlier, this is not an easy business. So we go with it. 8 days, it was more than 8 days, but 8 days is a number that keeps getting said. It was going to be longer than that. But to 8 days to 8 months or 9 months or 10 months, whatever it is, we're going to do the very best job we can do every single day. Because that's what the folks that do this type of job have to do. You have to have that mindset because it is not an easy business, like I said.
Thank you both. We'll take our next question from Jeff Faust with Space News.
Hey, good afternoon. We had heard in some earlier briefings